Hey there, this is Gus. This is my showcase project, MicroBlock. Let's get to it. This is a game where the main mechanic is the player being able to shrink. I did this with the blueprint system provided here, all custom, mind you. I made a shrink check for a true-false condition. It goes into both ends, of course, and each one has a different set of float values and other sort of function checks that it's doing. So, for example, the height relative to the camera size scoping of it being either shrunk or normal size character is really important. So yeah, all that information is split here. Same thing with playing sound effects for the player to immediately understand what's happening. So, for example, there's a unshrink sound effect and a shrink one that you will hear as we play the game. Also, I made a song for the game, uh, which I have it set to play as the level starts. So we're just gonna be like going through that, and as we play the game, I'll explain more and more what we've got to uh, go for. So, anyways, let's begin. By the way, just so that you don't get jump scared, song starts when I start the level. It's not your Spotify auto playing. Okay, cool. Let's go. All right. So we're in, right? We play as a robot model, experimental in its design. The thing that it does that no other bots can do is the ability to shrink itself like this. And only till very recently was the robot sort of like booted back up again by its backup system. And it's now trying to investigate why he was made, what happened to the company that made him, the manufacturer, and just trying to piece things together. So yeah, we come in here and it seems like a waiting room. Windows show the outside. It looks very normal. We got some magazines here that you can pick up in a different version of the game. What I wanted to do was for the player to pick each one of them up and be able to like read through some of the stuff in them, like some of the art and the text, kind of doing some world building about what's going on in the game's world, since the game is not really about world building, more about the narrative itself. Anyways, some paintings and a ringer. So you're supposed to ring the button, and someone's going to attend you eventually. Nobody does. There's nobody here. So we can shrink ourselves, like I said earlier, and this lets us just wander around. We see that there's a little hole over there. However, we can't really get there. And something that I wanted to do for the game was that the player can't just like jump and shrink at the same time to reach an objective, right? This is just to so that people don't like exploit it. So the way it works is once you shrink, wherever the Z value last checked you, that's where you will be. So that way people can't like cheat out of the shrink mechanic. Anyways, let's actually like go through the level, shall we? So we shrink here, and we see the only possible way to go is a small like trail of like cheese crumbs leading into this ventilation crate. There's probably a pack of mice somewhere. We'll have to find out. But yeah, as we keep going up, we reach this little like crevice here, and it shows us the room, the security room. So this office building is more than we thought. Turns out it's a bit more fortified, and they're clearly keeping something here of some kind of value, right? So, for example, the paintings that we saw earlier turn out to be no more than see-through glass from this room to the other, so that everybody here can see what's going on in the waiting room. So yeah, some very heavy security kind of stuff going on here, and a lot of tripwires and lasers. So yeah, we don't want to hit any of that. This also prevents the player from just like dropping down and starting to go big and do stuff. It makes it more interesting this way for gameplay purposes. Anyways, from that crevice there, we saw this yellow button similar to the ringer at the door, which in a triggered version of the game, you basically just jump into the button, and then that disables all of the security measures like this. And we're back. So now that some magic happened behind the scenes, all the security tripwires are off, and the door is actually open. Not that it really matters much. The door is supposed to just let us backtrack, and we can even go back to our normal size here. We can walk around. One interesting part was trying to like understand the scale and the relativity between both shrunken and unshrunken forms, which I think I did a pretty good job at. Just being able to like display what like relativity, what the player can maybe reach, what they can't reach, what makes sense for them to see as massive and upon smaller inspection, right? Anyways, let's continue. So, as we saw earlier, there is still the mystery of this little vent crate here. So, what we're going to actually do here is platform up all the way to that room. Okay, excuse my jumping. There you go. Alright, so the goal here is just to jump in this stack of papers that we got here until we reach this one into this here, this little bulletin board ledge, which then we can just hang from where the pipes were earlier, and boom, we're here. So yeah, it's kind of like we went around the whole thing to get back to here, which I think is pretty neat. But this is where the level expands upon even more so than this part. We jump into the bathroom wing of the facility, where obviously to continue we have to be small, right? Go forward. And for this part, we have some robotic mice. These guys are supposed to be the ones that left those cheese crumbs from earlier. And basically, the way that this encounter would work when triggered is just that you can just like stand up and literally like squish them all with your like robot feet. So yeah, like super like light, just really like silly combat mechanic there, but it's not really a combat game, so that's not really the point. Anyways, now we just investigate the bathrooms itself and the toilet halls to see where to go next. Don't mind the yellow. I made it yellow just for me, really. Not for you guys. Don't worry about that. But yeah, I would suppose that the only place to go would be to the sink. Or the sinks, multiple, right? So we're gonna climb up from the trash chute into this little pipe here, into this one, into the air blower, into this roof light. We're just gonna keep jumping across like so. And it leads to here. This specific sink has like the whole thing taken off it, maybe for maintenance, who knows. We jump through, boom. And then we're in. This is the facility proper. We can unshrink ourselves once again. And once we get to this bit, we have a stack of even more papers with like information about the facility itself, stuff that could maybe go back to the character's own lore. Again, I would have it so that you can click through everything and like read through it, and it'll show up in your HUD. But alas, And we have a safe here. The code of the safe, the puzzle, is meant to be in the stack of papers. There's like certain numbers that are like circled in the select papers that you get to read, which would be a series of total of like 6 numbers total throughout these stacks of paper, 1 each, right? So you put that here, you open it up, you get a piece of info that's important, and at the end, you see this lever here. Once you pull this lever, this happens. Alright, so once you do that, this wall comes down. So it turns out that this whole thing is one conjoined room, which was only separated for the sake of security and confidentiality of the little office town facility that nobody thought was going to be a big deal. By the way, this is meant to be like in an apartment flat, basically. Like, this isn't supposed to be some mega complex full of stuff and different wings of research and R&D stuff. It's just a flat size kind of office slash investigation rooms, right? But yeah, once you get all the info from here, the mission objective is completed, and the player can literally walk out from whence they came, meaning that the whole level is one closed sort of loop. And yeah, that's the game. That's what I got. I know it's not the idealized sandblock concept that I wanted to do a while ago, but I think the shrinking mechanic is interesting enough, and the level design supplied with it, I think, provides a pretty interesting kind of look at a platformer. Very inspired, obviously, by games like Astrobot and like Split Fiction and It Takes Two, right? Games like that. So yeah, thanks for watching. I will make sure to include as much info as possible in the documentation and the dev videos, so check this out too. And yeah, thanks for watching. Have a good rest of your evening, afternoon, morning, whichever one it is. And have a good one. Okay? See you now. Bye bye.